straight ahead, got my head in the game. With the red light on, I'm just waiting for the change. Keep my head down low.
Okay, there's a lot to say about this video, about what they're talking about here. Have a listen to it when you come back. There's a lot to take apart in this, and I know this is what's happening in the UK, but you can see that this is starting to what taking place in Australia as well. You can see that this is the road that we're going slowly starting to go down. Very disappointing, but well, I also think it's biblical. Unfortunately, it's Bible seems to point out that we're heading for hard times, and I think this is part of it.
Now, it's not just Australia that's being changed, and not always in a safe way, by mass immigration and multiculturalism, so that we, for instance, have more Palestinian flags than Australian ones in some of our cities, even on Australia Day. It's even more dramatic in Europe. When you take Britain, the changes in parts of London, for instance, where Redbridge Council has started with a Muslim call to prayer.
Please remain standing for prayers. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
Policemen stood by and I seemed to be guarded a Muslim man who was singing the call to prayer on London Bridge. Yet, in contrast, you check what happened when this busker tried to sing her Christian songs in the street. This is the busker.
I know your love flows like a river.
And this is the police volunteer, herself an immigrant from Eastern Europe, who told her to stop with this sinful church singing.
You're not allowed to sing church songs outside of church grounds, by the way.
You're not allowed to sing church songs outside
of church songs or church
you're not allowed
grounds.
To,
that's fine. That's
you're
fine.
not allowed. She just said you're not allowed to sing church songs outside of church.
Our church outside of church grounds, unless you have unless you be authorized by the church to do this kind of song.
He's not saying anything anymore.
Are you saying that you don't care about the Human Rights Act? You're lost.
Look, personally, I see clips like this and I find it infuriating, in a nation like Britain, where they're a Christian nation. They are supposedly, they were anyway, a Christian nation. But remember, in all things, you can see you've got to relate it back to what the Bible says. Okay, this is what I believe. You can go back and see this is where the Bible says the world is eventually going to go. So just, for example, just one section, when in Matthew 24, okay, when Jesus is sat at the Mount of Olives and the disciples have come to him privately, it says, and they said, tell us when will all these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? So Jesus starts off talking to them and telling them, in this context, he's saying this is going to happen towards the end of the age, this tribulation period. He's telling them, setting out all the things that'll happen during the tribulation. So in that context, he's saying all these things. And in verse 9, he says, then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. So we know that in this time, Christians will be hated by all nations. It's not just going to be, that you can live in this country and you're going to have this country and you can have a lot of favor in one country, or like America is a very, very Christianized country. So, generally speaking, as far as I know, even in Australia as well, Christians have a lot of favor. But the time will come when Christians won't have favor at all. And going by what Jesus is saying in Matthew 24, when he's describing this in the tribulation, this is the tribulation period. You will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, will hate one another. So when I see things happening like this, where, you know, other religions are just allowed to do whatever they want. You know, the call to prayer, the Islamic call to prayer during council meetings, you know, shutting down the whole road on the London Bridge. They're allowed to do whatever they want. They're allowed to do that out in public. And yet then you have, you notice it was a volunteer, the police officer was actually from another country. That I think they've done exactly what we have done here, you know, brought in police from other nations. So she obviously doesn't know the law. She's got no idea about copyright law for starters, and no idea on the law and allowed to be able to sing out in public like that. And yeah, British law is very similar to Australian law, and copyright laws around the world. You know, you can you are allowed to sing out in public, regardless of whether it's a Christian song or a secular song. But we see Jesus has said, getting back to it, Jesus said that you will be hated. This is what's going to happen in the tribulation period. You will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. So we're seeing that build up. We're seeing that starting to escalate more and more on the news. So we shouldn't be surprised. It's disappointing, but this is where the world's heading. And I think it's just a sign. It's just a sign of the times to come. We're going to see more and more of this. And it's not that we shouldn't push back against it. It's not that we shouldn't be disappointed. It's not that we shouldn't pray against it or anything like that, but it's going to happen. And we need to be realistic in our point of view and look at it from a biblical perspective. We always need to speak out about it, I believe, because you can't just sit there and be silent and let these things happen. You still need to stand up for Christ, stand up for what you believe in, stand up for the Bible, for biblical values. But unfortunately, this is where the world's heading. It's my opinion. Thanks for listening to Slippery Slope.
Here comes the sun, dancing on the moon. Here comes my baby in the distance. I can smell a sweet perfume. Can you see the stars? They're dancing to a tune. I know my baby, she's waiting in the distance and singing her own tune. I'm still in love with you.